Um, Before I start, so are we good with moving forward? It does look like we are still missing our fifth member, but it is 9:08, so I think we should move forward. All right. Welcome everybody. We have here on the panelist side, Sunya Ganapathy, Paul Manganero, Stephanie Zaremba, and Pat Fortin. With us, we also have Lisa Wong, Marty Jones, Beth Rudolph, Enzo Rascianato, and Mina Macarius and Jillian Barger. I'm Brian Zakelli, Town Planner, and we're going to get started right away. So this is our working meeting number 1. We're going to be meeting for an hour today. Marty Jones is going to give a quick update of the review of the task force previous meeting with any updates from Lynn. I just have a couple of quick slides, slides about design because we did not get to that yet. And then we're going to go into kind of report structure, look at kind of a draft report that we've received from 2 members. And this is not to say that that's what the report is. It's just going to look at formatting, try to show what types of things we should be putting in the findings and the recommendations. And then we'll finish off with this potential request to the select board for an extension that was talked about at the last time. We'll go over that real quick, and then kind of open up to any type of overall questions about process or otherwise. So I'll turn it right over. I don't have any slides for this, Marty, for this review of our task force meeting number 3, but if you wanted to give an update from your conversations with Lynn, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, we did spend a lot of time and we'll continue to spend time on revenue. So Lynn is doing a couple of things. First of all, there were some more questions, as you all remember, for Civico on their numbers to refine some other things and to take them out for longer term projections and to show what would happen when they get to a refinance, which will probably happen between year 15 and 20. She's talked to them. There were big funding applications due today for City of Boston financing, so they were not able to get to it. She's hoping to talk to them today and have a detailed conversation and work through those numbers. But as you guys know, if you've ever submitted for funding applications, you just got to crank it out and get it done. So that's going to happen. They'll be reworking the numbers. The other thing that Lynn and I have been doing is gathering some examples from other deals about how they split the proceeds of refinancings and cash flow with investors and other sources, because one of the complicated things to figure out is where sharing to the town falls in terms of the waterfall, if you will, of different priorities, paying back debt, renovating the building, paying the asset management fee we've agreed to pay, and how those things sort of fall out in priorities. A lot of that will not be negotiated with an investor until they have an investor. You don't sell and get your tax credit investor until you are literally 2 years from now when you have the tax credit. So there's not going to be a way to say with precision what the split will be between the investor and the developer when they share in cash flow, because it varies from deal to deal, negotiated from deal to deal. So we're trying to get some examples of what other deals have done to maybe get at least a range. So we'll be able to kind of talk with a little more specificity about how that split might work. And so we can be clear about what the town needs to negotiate in terms of where it fits in the waterfall of getting its extra annual lease payment and its extra payment at refinancing. I think we agree.
Marty, sorry, super quick. A lot of people understand waterfall. Some people don't.
Okay.
Can you please explain what waterfall is?
Exactly. So basically, if you think about the cash that's available to the project in a bucket of water, and you're going to pour that water out, what's it going to hit first? So, on an annual basis, first it's going to hit your operating expenses, then it's going to hit your debt to the lender, then it's going to hit from, reserves, it's going to hit In this case, we've agreed to an asset management fee annually. And, you know, so how that goes down as to who gets paid in which order of priority. So the waterfall really means kind of just the order of priority of splitting the cash that's available from either an annual look at the numbers or when you get to a sale or refinancing. So does that make sense?
Paul, go ahead.
Yeah.
We do want to get to the bottom of that. Yep.
Yeah,
go.
it does make sense. I just wonder, is that negotiable? Like, can we be at the top of the waterfall?
All things are negotiable. You're not going to get in front of the debt. You're not going to get in front of the expenses. You're not going to get in front of, you know, the investors who are putting up money for tax credits. So they're going to need. So yes, it is a negotiation. And one of the hard things that I'm trying to hopefully convey is we don't have everybody around the table right now, right? We don't have frankly, we don't have the public agencies, the soft debt from the state, because they don't even have that funding yet. They haven't applied for it. We don't have the investor around the table. So we're going to have to do some negotiating with the developer, understanding what typically happens. And we will be in front of the investor on a number of things. So, but just to be clear, we cannot nail all of that down now because, you know, remember, we are only at like a purchase and sale agreement on a piece of land, right? They haven't even kicked the dirt yet. They haven't even looked, because they just have a purchase and sale agreement. So all of this stuff will get negotiated, and the town needs to negotiate a structure so they can be around the table as we go through what will be a, you know, 2-year, 3-year process to get the financing and to go through all that. So, yeah.
Thank you. I was always the kid in school that got picked last for kickball, so I don't want to be picked last again, hopefully. Thank you.
Pat, go right ahead.
So Marty, you just woke me up a little bit when you said 2 or 3 years negotiation. So at the point this project is fully approved, how long before there's a shovel in the ground, do you think?
So here's what happens in these kinds of deals, right? This is like a purchase and sale agreement. So once we get the LDA approved, then they will need to go out and they'll do their soil tests. They'll do borings. They'll do more engineering on the Chamber of Commerce building. They will, you know, review all the title stuff again. They'll do all that due diligence you do, right, before you agree to buy something. So they've got to do that. Then they've got to apply for their permits. They've got to come to the town of Winchester and say, you know, we need planning board approval or we need zoning approval for those permits. Only after they get those land use permits from the town can they then go to the state and ask for funding. And the state funding is only available in a competitive process once a year. So depending on the timing, you know, if we can move this project this fall and get them to a town meeting this fall, then they've got a chance at applying for funding a year from now. Because between now and then, they've got to do their due diligence, their drawings, their permitting in the town. Then they apply for the financing with the state. And it takes the state, because they get all these applications, it takes them 6 months plus or minus to decide who wins the competition for funding. And then after that, once they know they have the funding, they have to get their tax credit investor, which that's pretty fast. And then they got to finish their construction documents and get their final construction pricing, because, you know, you never get that until you're really ready to put a shovel in the ground. So their original proposal and all of the developers that submitted basically had a, you know, 2 to 3 year time period, depending on when the approval happened, before they could put a shovel in the ground. And we had hoped that it would go into the ground right when the MBTA work was wrapping up. So that, you know, because they can't get on the site because of the MBTA for a long period of time anyway. So that at the high level, that's kind of the time frame we're talking about.
Thanks.
All right, thanks for that, Marty. We will have questions that are overall questions. We will carve out some time at the end of this meeting. I think with that, we have, like I said, very quick slides here on the design, and we'll have a discussion, question and answer related to that. Let's keep moving here. Okay, so kind of here's this, here's the site plan and kind of just gonna give a very quick general overview of the site layout and design of the project. So there's a, excuse me, there's a real retail space that's on Waterfield Road. There's a public outdoor courtyard here, as well as you can see it is Chamber of Commerce courtyard. As of right now, the Chamber of Commerce building is planned to be reused as a multifunctional community space. As for the main building, there's 2 levels of indoor parking. So there'd be 40 public spots and 45 private spots. It's required for there to be enough bike storage for the units, for the residential units in there. There's also a couple of EV stations, charging stations. This is at the moment, an all electric building. There's rooftop solar and there's some green stormwater infrastructure as well. There's a lot packed in to this site. So Civico was really chosen for a number of different reasons related to the design. One was that everybody felt it was very high quality. It also happened to have the highest amount of affordable units, and not in terms of percentage, but in terms of number. It had the highest number of public parking it had the highest number of public parking spaces. Again, sustainability, the fact that it's a mixed-use project, the amount of public open space, as well as there are private amenities like rooftop areas and that type of private rooftop area. So what we're trying to find out now from the task force is really what are your concerns, if any, related to the design. So these are the thing and it's not just these 6 things. But this is the last slide. We're trying to open up conversation here to try to figure out, should anything be changed, and if anything, how or why should it be changed? So I'm just gonna open up the floor to anyone who has either has questions, comments, or anything related to that from the task force about the design of the project. Paul, go right ahead.
No, I think we discussed this before, and the answer isn't concluded yet because we're not at that stage. But do we know how many 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, 1 bedrooms will be in the proposed 60 units?
Yeah, we do have that. I can get that up in a minute. It is required that 15% of the 15% of the units be 3 bedroom. That's just part of the DHCD requirements. I can, or if somebody else has it handy while I have this up. Stephanie, do you have those numbers or do you have a question?
It's on the first page of Lynn's memo. It breaks down all of the studio 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms by AMA or AMI rate. So there's units listed, broken down on that first page.
All right, I can get that up, Paul. At the moment, does anybody else have any other questions related to that while I pull this up?
Right. The 15% requirement for 3 bedrooms, who requires that?
The Department of Housing and Community Development. Okay. So that's just part of really not just any 40B. So meaning if it's 25% affordable, that's the minimum requirement for a 40B. If it's anything more than that, DHCD requires that new construction with an affordable component be for at least a portion of it for families. So that's where that third, I got this memo. So that's where that requirement comes from.
And this is the state agency that gives the funding for affordable housing. So in order to be able to receive the funding for affordable housing, you have to comply with their design guidelines and all their other rules and regulations. And the 15% 3-bedroom units, at least 15% 3-bedroom units is their state housing agency requirement.
So yeah, I'm sorry, the memo that I have is not it's the most recent one, but I think the memo that you're looking for, or Stephanie, that you reference is the memo previous, okay, now I got it. Sorry about that. Too many screens, but okay, so here is the breakdown. based upon unit type and AMI. Okay, that's everything. So in terms of three bedroom units, there's one at 50%, and then there's two at 60, and then there's two market. So not a ton.
Okay.
Just six.
Yeah, they don't all have to be affordable with 3 bedrooms. It just has to be in the same proportion. So you can't have 3-bedroom units and make them all market. You know, the state's goals are to have units kind of distributed equally among the income mix, so that and you know, amenities and everything else have to be the same among the different income mixes.
Okay, so if the project was 25% or 75% affordable, then you have to have 75% of 3 bedrooms affordable, is that correct?
Correct.
You got it.
Are you required to have 3-bedroom market rate units as well, or just the affordable units?
You're not required to, but it's a good moneymaker for the developer to at least have, you know, 1 or 2 of those high-end larger units that can make up for a lot. We're seeing that in the Center Business District as well. Just it makes it a little more palatable for the project.
I would think also if it was a moneymaker for the developer, would probably be more revenue source for the town too, in taxes, and maybe you could pay a little bit more for it.
Yep, definitely. I mean, it is an over under there, just as a note, meaning that the larger the bedroom, the larger the units, generally you might have more kids, maybe. So then the idea is that you have 2 kids in there, and then the tax revenue goes away essentially. So it's not there at all. So it's a, yes, you get more revenue from the 3 bedrooms, but it literally all goes away if you have several students in the school system.
Yeah, so I haven't done the math here, Brian, but I do believe that they are providing the minimum required number of 3-bedroom units in this development, but I'm trying to find the numbers added up to confirm that, but I believe that's what I don't know if anybody else has them handy. I can keep looking while we're talking.
And if you guys can help me with the math, because I was a phys ed major in college for a reason, but so that would be 5 3-bedrooms. Right, so that leaves us what, 55 more units?
I think it's 6, actually.
It's yeah, there's
Okay.
yeah, it's 60. So I'm sorry, 10% at 3 need to be 3 bedrooms, which they are 6 out of 60.
Okay, then what's the next? The 2 bedrooms would be 1, 16, 19, 21.
Oh, we've got, I'm trying to find it.
Yeah, and I mean, the fact that there's not a lot of questions about design is saying something. Just I want to be clear that, and again, this is more of a working meeting, but like this is based on the line of questioning here is kind of based upon the mix of the affordable units and how that plays into the report. But again, it's not a big deal because there's not a lot of questions about design at the moment. But just
Yeah, and to me, I'm assuming that the constitution of the units is part of the design too. You know.
Yeah.
You know.
it's certainly, yep.
Yeah. So we have
Sorry, keep going. Keep going, Paul.
Go ahead, Paul, if you're still going.
six 3-bedroom, 21 1-bedrooms. What's the difference between a 1-bedroom and a studio?
I believe the 1-bedroom has a separate bedroom, where the studio it's more of an efficiency kind of thing where everything is in one space. No separation of a room.
Okay, so if I did my math right, there's 17 1-bedrooms and 7 studios.
Actually, Paul, I think, sorry, I just did the math. It should be 12 studios, 18 1-bedrooms, 24 2-bedrooms, and 6 3-bedrooms. And that should add up to 60.
12, 18, and how many did you say? 22?
24 2-bedrooms.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All
There we
right, Pat, and then Enzo.
Yeah, so I agree with Paul. I mean, I think unit layout is part of design. I mean, what you're getting is 106 bedrooms from my math. And I didn't just do it now with that, but obviously that creates, the kids are part of it, but you know, if you have high school kids, you might have cars, you know, that's part of the concern on the parking is they're given 45 spaces for 106 bedrooms. So that is a design problem to me. And I've said it in other arenas. The other two things that I think, you know, now that we really understand the money and all the details on this, the open space seems massive for closed in kind of funky space. And the chamber building to me seems like just the town's wasting a huge resource. I'd almost rather see that building go all across the back, take out the chamber building and let them extend the building across the back right to the train tracks. And I don't know, maybe add another 20 units, whatever percentage, you know, we need to maintain the affordable numbers that work. But it's just such an inefficient design. And you have a beautiful common across the street. And a lot of open space, it's fields and everything. So it seems like it's just a ton of open space on that internal courtyard, which is costing us money. I mean, you know, it's lowering numbers on this thing.
The idea would be to I'm just getting that thread. So potentially either getting rid of or reusing the Chamber of Commerce building for units that would still require parking. So you would say keeping the parking ratio the same at 0.75, or more units means more parking. So I would like to carry that forward in terms of your.
Well,
Can I just jump in before we get into the details? So Brian, do you have a plan that shows the MWA store easement through there? So we can understand kind of some of the reason it's laid out the way it is because they can't really build over that MWA store easement. So that's a huge constraint on the full build out of that site.
Yeah, maybe you can't go all the way and that's out of my scope, Brian. If you said to me, you know, you can buy this land, what would you do on here? I'd have less open space and more on-ground parking, you know, and wherever the easement is, it is, but you put parking on there. And rather than, what's more important, the open space or the parking, I guess would be a debate that I don't know if that creates RFP problems or not to me, but you know, there's a lot of land there how many people are going to be going through this larch and hanging around and fooling around in there? When you already have the common across the street, which is gorgeous, and this open space will never be able to compete with that unless maybe you have a skateboard or something. So that's more what I'm thinking is not so much, you can't put the building everywhere, obviously, because of that easement, but the chamber building, even if you just tore it down and you built a 3-unit apartment building there as part of this development, even if it has to be freestanding, at least it's revenue. I mean, they're talking about the revenue numbers that Lynn had are pathetic for that building. Are we better off to make it residential, get another affordable unit or two and get a couple market rate units, and at least maybe you improve the project and get rid of an old, I don't know what it costs to rehab that building. I mean, that's one of my questions for Lynn. What's Civico's budget to rebuild that building? I mean, I don't know if anyone's been in it, but go walk through it. It's scary. And structurally, I don't know where it's at, but it's going to be a major gut rehab to turn it into anything. So they must have some real money in there to deal with it. And Beth, you talked about tearing it down. I mean, I'm sure it costs some money to tear it down, but I can't, when we're talking a $30 million project, I don't see tearing that down as an obstacle in the development.
Yeah, so it's really the physical tearing down the building. Yeah, I mean, down in 10 minutes probably, right? But it's the MWA store that goes underneath it. And so that's the reason that the MBTA was their original plan for the first 9 years of the discussions we had with them was to tear that building down so they could use it as lay down space for their construction. And they made the determination based on what was going to be asked by them from the MWA to basically rehab that sewer line that goes underneath the building, that it wasn't financially feasible for them. So it's not as simple as the costs associated with just tearing down the building. There would be some requirements from MWA in terms of rehabilitation of that sewer line that goes under the building.
Sorry, I did find the map you were looking for, or really it was like the easement map. And then I haven't forgot about Enzo and Stephanie. But
yeah, so you can see not only does the easement through the building, but the actual sewer line, yeah, Brian's showing there, it clips that building, or more than clips it, it goes underneath it. So that's really where the costs come in.
Well, then, so go a step further. If is that building worth more as parking, or is it worth more as community space? Tear it down and put another 10 parking spaces there. And it does look to me like you could still bring the building along the back assuming I'm looking at the design correctly, along that back, what's the left side of the screen to us, they stop the building about halfway into that, that parcel, bring it all the way back to the easement and add another 10 units. It seems like it would almost be a better design with it running across the back. There's just woods and stuff back there anyway, but I mean, I'm not a designer, but we're commenting on design, so those are some of my wish lists.
And you got to get fire trucks around it. So you do have some constraints about being able to get around the building. But at a high level, it sounds like, Pat, you're on the add more units, add the more units to get more, consider adding more units to get more revenue camp, and let the developer see if they can do that. That would be something that I'd at a high level, it sounds like that's what you're saying.
Yes, Marty, perfect. I mean, it does. This is, I mean, my math says the town's getting $1 million and 600 is getting given back. So you're getting 400 grand for this development, and then potentially some juice along the way. And if that's what the town wants to do, I'm not bitching about that at all. I'm just trying to understand it. And, the town makes a decision that affordable housing is worth the money, then that's great. I'm not opposed to that at all, but it's just trying to understand that. And if it's a design that we can get more, you're going to get probably more affordable, which is a win for them, and also improve the numbers for the town.
Okay, I'm glad that comment came out in terms of getting to the bottom of that and looking at that lever to see, can we move that lever of the Chamber of Commerce building? What can we get out of that is really, because it was not required that we would keep that building. They decided to use it as community space. So we can ask them, and the select, or that can go in the report, and we can ask Civico what we can move there. Enzo, why don't you take it away? You're muted.
Yep, sorry. Yeah, again, I'm going to have limited design questions. I was more just intrigued by the spread of the units. And so if you want, can you bring that back up again? So is this right that so the 30% AMI units, that's the top of the chart, right? That means for folks that are making 30% of the average median income of Massachusetts?
The area is
Yes.
Boston, Quincy, New Hampshire, not all of Mass, but our area, which is
Right.
Boston, Quincy, and Southern New Hampshire. Yeah.
Okay, which is like 100,000 or 110,000, something like that, right? Something
Yes.
in that range.
The 100, yes, the 100% of AMI, or the average, is about 100. Yes.
Okay, so people who would live there would have to make no more than 30% of 110,000.
Yes.
Correct.
But
For a
yet
single individual, correct.
Okay, but then for the 3-bedroom units, the net rent is $3,000 a month, or is that a year?
So the reason that is you see beside 30%, it says PBV.
Yeah.
That's for project-based voucher. So basically, everybody knows that people who make 30% of income or less can pay nothing, basically, for rent. So part of their request to the state in their funding will be to get project-based vouchers that will help pay the rent. So those rent numbers that you see will not 100% be paid by the person living there. The person living there will pay 30% of their income, and then the state, through these project-based vouchers, will make up the difference in the rent. When you get to the ones that say self, that means the person living there is paying 100% of the rent. So that's what those little abbreviations mean.
Got it. Okay. Because the
Is
units,
that, Marty, is that like a Section 8 type of voucher type of program?
Yep, similar to that. Yep, exactly. But they are attached to the building. So they don't wander around like the vouchers we have in town for Winchester that can wander around to different landlords. These are attached to the building. The person moves out, they lose their voucher. Somebody new moves in, they get the rent subsidy. So it's a rent subsidy.
okay. Because looking at the numbers, I mean, for the 3-bedroom, the developer's going to get $3,000 a month versus on the market rate unit, they're getting $3,400. That's not, I mean, how we can say that that's not worth anything, those units are worthless to the developer, that doesn't sound right.
No, they are worth it. Exactly. I mean, the voucher rents are essentially based kind of on market. They lag a bit. They're not, they're never as high as market is, especially, in a location like this. But the concept is to, encourage landlords to accept low-income residents. These rental subsidies will get the landlord close to what they might get if they're renting to the market. So yeah, the revenue side is higher.
Thank you.
Enzo, any follow-up? All right, Stephanie, go right ahead.
Going back to what Pat was raising, Beth, I think you mentioned, or maybe it was Marty mentioned some constraints around fire trucks. Are there, from a planning zoning perspective, Brian, are there requirements that would have fed into why Civico chose that amount of open space, things like that? Like, what are the kind of regulatory limits aside from fire trucks and easements that might impact what Pat's proposing?
So I don't think it would. What Pat is proposing is really reusing the Chamber of Commerce building. So whether or not that's used for parking or units or anything, the building is already there. That wouldn't affect that in terms of open space. It's not open space now. So technically, if it was surface, I'm not saying it would be or should be. If it's surface parking, that would technically be not usable open space, but open to the sky. So there wouldn't, off the bat, I don't think there'd be any zoning issues.
Well, so Brian,
reusing
there are open space requirements under the zoning.
Right.
I think it would matter if they were planning to do this as a 40B or go through like the town zoning.
Right, I'm just saying there'd be no change in open space. It would be an increase in open space if this building would go away. That's all I'm saying. So it would,
Right.
it would be more.
But the open space definition is based on pervious versus impervious surface. So if they had it as grass to meet the open space requirement and they paved it for surface parking, then they might not be able to meet the open space requirement in the zoning if they weren't trying to do it as a 40B.
Well, so clearly a little analysis by me would have to happen on its face in terms of right off the bat. I don't think the reusing of this building would affect zoning, but I can look into that.
Well, I think the one thing is if we go back to what everybody proposed, my recollection is that all of the developers who looked at this and who analyzed Winchester zoning and tried to figure out what to build, they were all in this same number of unit ranges, as I recall. I don't think we had anybody that was significantly higher in terms of number of units. So just thinking backwards, they looked at everything and trying to balance open space, parking, number of units, height, all that kind of stuff. And they got kind of in this range of units that fit. So that tells us something about all the different people that analyzed it and kind of came up with the same, 60 is not a magic number. Maybe you could do 65, and I think somebody did propose 65, but we didn't, I don't think, get any that were at 90 or, so it's kind of on the margins, weighing all these factors together.
So Sumya, and then Paul. Yep.
Sorry, there's just one. Sorry, Sumya, I just had one quick follow-up. Does the chamber have any stake in that building currently? Like, are they? Pat, I think you're representing the chamber here, so maybe you would know best. Are they?
No, we were a tenant. We were a tenant to the town. The chamber was a tenant for the town at a dramatically subsidized rent. The chamber has moved and really has no plans to go back. So,
okay.
I mean, if the chamber was given space in this building, that was one of the original chamber asks was, could there be a little chamber office somewhere? That's never been addressed or offered. So the chamber just went and did what they had to do because, there wasn't any other option.
Thanks. Sorry, Sumya.
All right, Sumya.
Personally, I think that I like the design. I think it's very aesthetically pleasing. I did have a question about the chamber building because Civico said it was going to be community space. Well, what does that mean? Because from what Pat mentioned, the building's pretty dilapidated. Are they going to renovate it or do anything with it?
Yeah, the plan was for renovation. It was not out of possibility that the chamber or another town affiliated group could potentially go in there. So it's unknown. They've just said that they're willing, that they're not going to take the building down as part of their project, and that are open to community, making it a community space of some kind. Some other groups decided to take it down. but it's not required that we reuse it or not, but nothing planned other than a community space working with the town to get what we need.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Please.
If it's community space, is that something that the town could get rent from? Or would it be part of?
It's possible. I don't know if they would get that revenue and that it's for
Okay.
community space. That has not been worked out at all. But you're talking about a potential new revenue stream. But whether or not that's for the town or for the applicant, it needs to be determined.
Right.
Paul, you had a. Oh,
Right.
sorry, Mina had a quick in there, and okay, Mina.
Clarifying point on Samia's question too. Just keep in mind, one of the things that could come up if the town takes public space, like the community space, kind of for its own purposes, while it might generate revenue, it might also generate costs at the outset if there's going to be construction, because that part may have to be publicly built and financed, or at least publicly built, leading to the differences on pricing and procurement that we talked about last time.
Thanks for that insight. Paul.
Thank you. Yeah, back to Marty's point, I'd like to maybe see that other proposals from the other developers to see if we were in the same kind of range of units. And then if so, was that because of the direction and the pre-qualifications that were dictated by the town? Or were these people given just free rein to come up with their own design? And then one last comment back on the affordable housing piece of it and the percentages. I know there's been a lot of discussion, which I'd really be for, and I know it's legally you can't do it, but a lot of discussion has been talked about giving local residents that work at the hospital, the fire department, police department, an opportunity to live there. But I think at those percentages, I don't know one police officer, nurse, doctor, firefighter that would qualify under most of those percentages. Like I said, 30, 35,000. I think most of our public workers in the public departments make substantially more than that.
So the numbers that you're looking for that we from the housing production plan, where it is 20% of Winchester residents qualify for 80 and below. So you're right, they might not be 30%. They are 80 and below. And really the question that you're asking, which is a very important one, is that how many, if we change those 80% units to 60% units, how many Winchester residents would actually would qualify? So first of all, yeah, so the numbers you're looking for, I don't have the one between 60 and 80, which is what I think you're asking for, is what percentage of Winchester residents would qualify for 60 and below. We have the 80 and below, so we don't have that information.
I did not ask that. I just made reference to what's proposed on that sheet, but that would be a good venue to look at for sure.
Can I ask a quick question, Brian? It's not that they have to be Winchester residents currently, is that you're trying to support people who might work in Winchester, right? So it could be a teacher's aide, it could be somebody working a lower role in a hospital, not necessarily a profession, like a nurse or something, right? That would be.
Yeah,
right.
there are many people that work in hospitals, for example, that that don't make six figures. So there's a lot of different types of service jobs. The point is that 20% would qualify right now for 80% and below, and you're trying to figure out how many Winchester residents could actually even live here, right? That's the question.
Yes. Yeah.
Or not just residents, but
Yeah,
people
it's more people.
work
It's
here,
people who
currently.
work in Winchester, right?
Correct.
It's not people who currently live in Winchester.
correct.
There are some portion of people that might qualify.
If they already live here, they already live here.
Right.
Yeah.
But it is allowed by the state to have preferences for local people who live or work in the community. So the developer and the town can ask the developer, and the developer, I think, has said they would ask the state for permission to have a local preference. And I think it's allowed up to 70% can give preference to people who live or work in Winchester, as long as they're within the income ranges. I mean, obviously you've got to be within the income ranges, but they do set up a system for that as part of the marketing plans and the process for selection in the building.
Yeah, that was my question. How many do we think would, if we get an idea, how many would qualify as proposed today? And if there's anything we can do to bump that up so more people could fall under that qualification.
Yeah, I mean, I think the hard part is, Paul, while I know there are a number of public employees in Winchester that make more than 60% of median income or more than 80% of median income. And so, I mean, it's still expensive to live in town and they would like to live in town, but it's kind of hard to find a way to make that part possible, because you can't on the market rate units under fair housing. I'm asking Mina or Jillian, you can't on the market rate units have a local, live work requirement. So.
Right.
No, Pat, why don't you go ahead?
So to go back to, because I think Enzo kind of pointed out a sweet spot with those, from that grid with the revenue. I mean, do we have any idea if we converted a 2-bedroom to a 3-bedroom, how much more revenue was that? I mean, to me, it looks like it could be 15 grand a year just in one unit. So it's probably a question for Lynn, and she's not here, but I mean, I'd love to see some analysis on, I mean, you look at that 50% 3-bedroom and the developer's getting 3 grand. I mean, why wouldn't we have more of those? And I mean, so the question, I guess, to Lynn would be, do a couple spreadsheets and see what happened if you had more of those. What is it? That's basically market rate rent within a inch of it. And so that's a pretty substantive difference to go, it gives you a lot of income in those compared to a studio at 1,300. And that's where potentially, I don't want to pretend to have the zoning memorized. If you could add some square footage, maybe you're not, to Marty's point, adding units, but if you could stretch the building back a little bit in that back corner towards the train tracks, could you change some studios to 3 bedrooms? And now you're tripling the revenue on those units.
Or even studios to ones. I mean, that all makes a difference.
Even Marty, I mean, if you look at those numbers, if you go from the 60% bucket to the 50% bucket on a 2-bedroom, you have 15 2-bedrooms, 60%, where you're making $1,500 a month rent, versus if you kick those down to 50%, it's double the rent.
Right.
I'm not sure if we only get a limited number of the PBV bucket. I'm sure there is, right? But
yeah, there is a limit. I can't remember the percent, but we can look at that. Yeah.
And again, Pat, do you still have your hand up, or is that from before?
No, sorry.
Okay, that's okay. I just want to point out again that the more 3 bedrooms that we get, the more school-age children and more parking potential. We keep talking about number of bedrooms, but Stephanie, please go ahead.
Super quickly, Diab Jarius just put in the Q&A that the median income of renter households in Winchester is 65,000, and I was wondering if we could get the citation for that to put that in our findings, get that validated and added in.
I don't have that data. I will talk to Diab about where that data.
I'm basically asking Diab through you if we can get that
Fair enough.
information. Thanks.
Fair enough there. We've been going, I wouldn't say we've been going quickly, but it's 9:50. I would like to keep it open for any other questions related to this design for a minute, and then leave the last 5 minutes just as kind of a quick homework idea of what we're doing for the report, in terms of how it should be structured and what the select board expects at the next meeting. So I still would like to keep it open for any type of questions whatsoever for the next 4 to 5 minutes, literally anything related to the project, period, anything. And then we'll take those last 5 to 7 minutes just to kind of go over the report structure. Sumya.
I just did have one question about the open space. Will that be available to the town, or is it just for the residents, the open community space?
The community space was supposed to be open for the town. Again, that is clearly very negotiable. There are a couple of questions in the chat as, did the chamber want to put the building, did they require that they have a lease there? No, they didn't require anything. We've been getting a little bit of rent payment from the chamber for that building, and we're just trying to figure out what would be the best use of it, but it would be open to the public. Paul, go right ahead.
Thank you. I know it's on the agenda, but you didn't mention we're going to get to it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I did skip an item on the agenda about the select board Yeah, I'm sorry, please. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm extremely sorry about that. Please, why don't we go there? I'm so sorry.
That's okay. You probably didn't have your coffee this morning.
Not enough.
I'm just wondering, we had a lot of discussion today and concerns about time and getting questions answered. Is it going to be a request made to the select board? And if so, I would recommend that we ask for an extension of a minimum of 30 days or sooner if we can get this information like that's being requested of Lynn and others.
So there's a motion on the floor to request a 30-day extension from the select board from the task force's agenda.
I would say a minimum of 30 days or sooner if we can get the requested information.
Okay, everyone, is there a second to Mr. Manganero's motion?
Yeah, I can second.
Second, Pat Fortin. So any discussion? Stephanie, is this your hand related to discussion?
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
It still just feels a little premature to me. I know we have a lot of questions, but we have another working session. I know I started writing findings and recommendations and sent those to you last night, Brian. Is there a reason why we need to ask for that extension now, having as yet zero sense of the state of the report? Sorry, just one thing, why can't we write the report, and if we write it and on September 30th or whatever our last date is, it is incomplete because we still have open questions, why can't we share that with the select board and say, this is incomplete because we don't have answers to these things, and therefore we request that you give us additional time to finish the report, as opposed to just like blanket asking for 30 days.
And so that just thank you for that there wasn't really no questions to the board, really just kind of more of a statement of why can't we do it this way. Sumya, can you have related to that?
Yeah, I also feel that we'll have a better understanding once we start writing the report. It was only once I started figuring out what my points are, where my questions were, and I just wonder if it's premature to ask the select board for an extension, maybe, as Stephanie said, to start writing the report, see where our holes are, and then follow up with the select board at that time.
Thank you. Further on the question? Yep, Paul, and then Pat.
Yeah, so that's why I left it open-ended where, 30 days, or if we get the required information or requested information sooner, we can stay right on schedule. I just think giving them notice sooner than later, it makes us look more efficient and staying ahead of the game, rather than when the homework's due, go into the teacher and say, we didn't have enough time to do this, we need more time. Kind of right now saying, if we need 30 more days, we'd like to have that freedom, but hopefully we don't need it.
Pat?
Yeah, and I guess this is probably to you, Brian, or maybe to Lisa. The selectmen meet on Monday, I think, so I'm assuming they're meeting next Monday. And half of my thought is I'd kind of like to know how they view it, because I tried to write my report and spend some time on it, and I have at least 8 or 10 financial questions, and I didn't even get to parking yet. I was just trying to deal with the financial point on a bunch of open issues that, are still floating out there. So I'd like to know how the selectmen feel, because if the selectmen on Monday say, no, you're not getting an extension, then we have to figure out how to deal with it. If the selectmen say, whatever, at least we get some feedback from them. It probably is, we still have 2 more meetings, so maybe we could get there. But I feel like there's all this stuff we just threw out there is going to be a lot of work, even if we submit questions over the next couple of days. So I kind of agree with Paul, at least give the selectmen a chance to let us know how they feel and what they're thinking. Because if they're going to say, no, tough luck, I want the report. It seems like this has been pretty rigid. I'm optimistic that they want this right. But if they're going to come back and say, nope, tough luck, get it done, then we have to figure out how to get it done.
Stephanie, and then Sumna, and then I may call for a vote.
Sure. So I didn't realize, I'd forgotten that the select board meeting was Monday. I think, could we just soften it a little bit and ask that they put on their agenda for Monday a brief discussion of the fact that there are outstanding questions. I think they may be able to provide some clarification to us in terms of, again, our charge and whether our job is to have answers or to call out things that are not answered. We can make a recommendation that we didn't have this information and therefore you should continue working with Lynn to figure out how this works, that kind of stuff. So maybe can I propose an amendment to your motion, Paul, that we not just ask for 30 days, but make a request that the select board discuss timing and give us their input, given that there are open questions.
Paul, would you be willing to edit your motion, edit the motion, and then I'm going to let Lisa talk. She probably has a process answer there. Go for it, Paul.
I respect your input, Stephanie, there, but I just don't see how the select board would know, not being really in tune to these meetings. I don't know.
Oh, they're on the meetings. Like, they've all been listening to these meetings. They're watching.
Oh, we assume that.
They're not into it.
I don't know. I know Susan was at a couple of first, but I don't know that. I just think we leave ourselves the flexibility with my original motion. Like, if we need it, we'd like to be able to have it extended 30 days, but if we don't, we'll come back on the same timeline.
All right, Lisa and then Sumya.
Yeah, so I want to remind the committee that the original deadline for the report was actually September 15th. So there was already an understanding that the entire process would take about 5 weeks. This process is already taking longer than that. So I would also mention that the select board is meeting at least 3 times in October. So not only are they meeting Monday, but they're also meeting on October 4th. I think that a blanket 30 days is probably a bit much. I think a more detailed progress report with specifics as to how long and why you're asking for it, because again, there is a negotiation on their timeline that also needs to be put into place. So I would request that if you're asking for a blanket 30 days, that might not go over well, but that we'll give a progress report on Monday. You'll have 2 additional meetings, plus a lot of the report writing is going to happen via homework. So what I would do is, maybe ask for another week extension and for an update on October 4th is to understand that you'll be giving a much more comprehensive update to the board on the 4th, which would include whether you're able to get consensus on actually voting on rankings, or whether you've want to then present your interim findings at that meeting, which I think makes sense, because I think this open timeline of there's already been a number of questions that have been raised. There's already been a number of findings, a lot of discussion. All of that is very fruitful. I think if there's a sense of this board of waiting until everything is tied up and completely giving one report to the select board at the end, and they're looking for the rankings, that might that might raise more questions about sort of the progress of this board.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Pat, I see your hand is up. I was going to call for a vote. Do you have 30 seconds here?
Yeah, just quickly. I'm just trying to. I'm not unaware of a 9/15 date. Well, our first meeting was what, August 25th or something. So I don't know what the 9/15 date is.
Yeah, so I mean, all of you received the public charge. I mean, the process for this committee, the deadlines, all of that was sent via email, posted on the website. I think that the major issues that we're trying to get everybody in the same room and try not to have task force meetings where not everybody is here. That's been very difficult. So because of August vacations and people had blanked out complete weeks, it wasn't possible. So we kind of knew that would be pushed out till September 30th, but we're kind of at that timeline of the September 15th is now September 30th. And, anything beyond that is sort of differentiated process of the board, and as was sort of predetermined in terms of your initial charge. I just want to make sure that, I mean, you're not going to be negotiating the lease, but what your input is going to be certainly, factored into the negotiation of the lease. And I just want to make sure that, in terms of the end product, there may not be a consensus on the ranking. So it's not about saying that here's this clear-cut avenue for exactly what the LDA is going to look like based on this report. That might be the case, that might not be the case, but those findings I think are going to be very important for the board to see.
Yeah, and I don't want to be disrespectful, but the 9/15 date, I mean, the selectmen gave a window for the charge. If we don't meet, I think it's kind of unfair to turn the screws on us like we're incompetent because we didn't get this thing done in
Correct.
2
And
weeks.
that's why it's, yeah,
No,
then that's why it's a
It's really
9:30 date.
irrelevant to us. I'm going to agree with Paul. I mean, I know we can vote, but just so people know my opinion, I'd like to hear what the selectmen have to say. If they want to keep the screws to us, this is a sprint, and this is a big deal. And I don't think they want, well, they can tell us if they want to report that we blow through and we have 1 million open, that's their choice. I'm going to take Brian's position that, let the selectmen decide. I'm going to support Paul and say, if the selectmen tell us we don't get an extension, then that's their choice. That's fine.
Okay, so we're a little over. I think everyone certainly has had the opportunity to be a part of this discussion of this motion. The motion on the floor from Paul Manganaro is that there is a request to the select board for a 30-day extension with the possibility of it being less if the information that has been requested is received in due time. The second was from Pat Fortin. I'm going to do a roll call vote. Sumya.
No, I think I would like to wait till our next working meeting to decide.
Pat.
Yes.
Paul.
Yes.
Stephanie.
No.
Motion fails 2-2. It is 10:03 right now. We were going to potentially go over the report structure a little bit. I would like to see what we have in terms of timing, so people have questions on how to write that report. Do we have 6 more minutes to go to 10:10 just to kind of give an update review of what we're doing? Okay.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to share here, Stephanie Zaremba and Sumya Gadapathy have been able to give a draft report, and they're like, this is not final by any stretch. This is just honestly to literally throw up on the screen so that we can see what some potential findings are of some of the groups. This is a little small. I'm going to make it a little bigger so that everyone can see. Parking. So I'm not going to go through all of these points, but the point is, the point of these findings are for everyone to determine some agreed upon bullet points. So I'm just going to say a couple of findings that I do find to clearly be within the wheelhouse of this group and that are findings. So just looking at the first 2 here. So the existing Waterfield lot provides frequently used parking spaces to residents, patrons, and local businesses, commuters, and town center employees. It's currently free for any uses between 6 p.m. and 8 a.m. Stephanie wanted to put those numbers in from Beth's presentation. Some public comments suggest that local businesses do not believe that they have been sufficiently engaged by the town. So you can see a lot of these comments are simply not necessarily things that we agree with or don't agree with. This is just what has come out of the talking points from the public feedback sessions, as well as the groups. Beth, you have a quick question?
Thanks, Brian. I just wanted to mention where it talks about town is engaged in a complementary process to study parking in town. That study is focused on short-term solutions, particularly related to the loss of spaces from outdoor dining and MBTA project construction. There will be some limited discussion of long-term parking, concepts and theories, but it's not focused on a long-term plan. That would be a separate study in the future.
Thanks for that, Beth. So that's kind of like a little taste of, I guess, of how the report writing is going to go, is that everybody is going to have all their bullet points. Like I said, they're all going to be color coded. Staff and Waterfield Task Force is going to go through these and essentially debate some of them, whether or not they are indicative of what took place or not. So staff is going to be able to, like Beth said, is that, well, we got to massage that one. That's not correct, and kind of go through those. So I honestly feel that the findings really should really be obviously more, fact-based, right? In terms of what we found, what came out of the conversations, and the recommendations. There will be different recommendations. There's no doubt that there will be kind of different ways to make this to further the project, I guess. So there will probably be a number of different recommendations that may or may not have complete consensus or buy-in or whatever we want to call that. But the hope is that the findings will be pretty well agreed upon, and the recommendations will kind of be a mix of different points of view. Pat, please.
So this is from Stephanie.
This is all Stephanie's. This is a draft. This is not final in any way. She's just like, I wanted to get something out simply so we could literally put it up on the screen so people can react to it. Do you have any? Yeah. Do you have any further?
No, I think it's awesome, Stephanie. Nice job. Can we get copies of it just to? And do you envision consolidating all these into one, or are you going to distribute 5 individual ones?
So the idea is that everyone, this is a draft, obviously. So we can give this to everybody, but it's by no means done or finished or anything like that. The idea is that we would conglomerate all of these findings of all of the different individuals. Where there are doubles, we would delete them. And where there are conflicting things, we're going to try to get through those. Sumya.
Stephanie, great job. Brian, I was just, is there, I was just wondering how many pages we should have. Is there, just in terms of report writing, should it be 2 pages, 3, or I was just curious from other.
I'm going to give you a horrible answer. It should be sufficient enough to get all the information that was. It's a horrible answer. I don't have an answer for you. There's no number of pages. It's obviously there's probably could be pages and pages of findings. So what we're trying to, I think that Stephanie's list here seems somewhat reasonable in terms of the findings of these more important things like parking and revenue. Probably could be easily a page, just the findings. I don't know how much that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm not taking any question and answer from the question and answer function. So if there's any attendees that are asking questions, we just don't have time. Paul, please go ahead.
Just back to the point, I just want clarification. So the record will show on that vote it's 2-2. How is that defeated if it's a lock? I just don't know the procedure.
No majority. You can only win. You can only win a motion can only be carried forward if there's a majority, and when there are 4, there's no majority. It's a possibility for.
So I could bring it back up next time if Mr. Cummings is here and we have 5.
Of course.
All right, thank you. Because I'm just concerned, like I said, the very first meeting, that we have to do this right rather than just on a timeline, because the device and the devices over the community in the last vote, no one wants to go back to that. So I appreciate the clarification on that. Thank you.
Fair enough.
Brian, can I quickly expand on that? So this item is actually on the agenda for the select board on Monday as a placeholder, because I wasn't sure where the vote was going to be today. So I will give a progress report to the select board and let them know of the 2-2 vote so that they can begin discussions. But it is not, unlike the one on October 4th, Monday is not actually advertised as a Waterfield Task Force meeting, so we can't have you guys actively participate as a board. But I will bring this up as an issue to the select board and let them know your thoughts. And
they will have a chance to discuss this at their meeting on Monday.
Well,
yeah.
Thank you very much for that. And one last thing, I've heard from community members. They want to know if the minutes of these meetings or material when it's going to be posted on the website, town website. People haven't been able to find it, and I got to be truthful. I don't know. I don't go on the town website, but I said I'd bring up that point. Thank you.
Yeah, Lisa, Patty, you want to answer that?
Yep. Winchester.us/Waterfield. You can specifically look at that site. Sometimes you might have to click the link that says the task force to have those specific materials, but we do post the agendas. We only post the minutes that are approved by this board. So, but in terms of materials, the handouts, the PowerPoints that you receive, those are all up on the website. So I know you've approved some minutes, those are up there. When we have the minutes complete for the last few meetings, we'll again bring those to one of your next meetings, have those approved and be put up on the board. And of course, WinCam has, not this particular one, but all the other meetings have been recorded by WinCam and are available.
That'd be great if we get the last couple of meetings so we can approve them. Thank you.
And really briefly, Brian, you asked a question earlier about seeing the other proposals of the other from the RFP. Those are also all on the website that Lisa just mentioned.
And
Yeah, and
I have I have
I just-
comparison ones that to, oh, sorry, go ahead, Marty.
The biggest one was 70 units, so they were all in the same range. And I don't know if it's because of a height limit that there is, so whatever. Can I just ask that anybody that has financial questions, even if it's not your complete list, just send them. It would be helpful just to be able to get that in the mix. This was a great conversation on some of those things today, and Lynn and I are going to be talking later this afternoon. So that'd be great.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Town Council, Waterfield Task Force, Beth, Lisa, and Patty. So we will meet again on Wednesday for another working meeting leading up to that report. Stephanie and Sumya, thanks for sending those drafts. I'm going to send, well, yeah, Mina, can I send these drafts to the entire group?
You can, as long as you also post them publicly. And so if you're ready for that, yeah. So
Lisa, can we, I mean, it's draft one. I mean, I don't know, it's really more for Sumya and Stephanie, whether they want to get those out in the public when they're totally not ready.
My draft is not ready. I still have a lot more work to do in it. So I'm not sure if I'd want it posted on the town
Right, so
website.
Mina, then can I have some, a little help here? What should I do?
Rattle the blue line.
this is
I ask a question? Mina, if we posted it as a Google Doc and it was publicly available, so that way, is that allowed?
Yes and no. You can do that as long as the link is there. And I guess I would say that I would ask the other members not to be editing it. Then I recognize this is the most obnoxious part of this. There was the Supreme Judicial Court actually issued a decision that said, like, we recognize there's an issue here with the open meeting law, but this is what it says, and the legislature hasn't changed it. So this is not, this one unfortunately has kind of been thought through that way. I guess the other way to do it would be for Brian to try to reconcile it with other comments. You did it the right way today by having it described and discussed in open session. I just, that's the open meeting law sort of standard for it. It does make drafting things in a group really hard.
So Stephanie and Sumya, what would you be comfortable if, or are you going to work on it this weekend so that I could potentially get this publicly on Monday? That at least would help. Okay, so Stephanie, okay, so that would at least allow other task force members to see it, and that we can get a little bit of time efficiency for the rest of the week. Okay, so why don't we work on that?
And Brian, one thing I've seen some towns do that might be helpful here is wherever you post this on the sort of town website, is just, you could always put a little note that says, we're trying, in the interest of efficiency, we're sharing things in draft form. There's still a draft, what's the draft, yada, yada, yada.
Okay, that seems great. It's 10:15. I started thanking everybody and then we got sidetracked, but I thank you everybody for coming. Have a great weekend. We'll see you on Wednesday. We will try to get these posted on Monday so that task force members can kind of trickle in that work throughout the week next week. Great.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend, everybody.
Bye.
Yep.